If James Brown is the hardest working man in showbiz, Kevin Yagher could very well be the hardest working man in special effects. Besides being a writer, producer, and director, Kevin has created such memorable creatures as Chucky from Child's Play and The Crypt Keeper, as well as effects on an impressive number of movies.
Started back, I guess, in childhood. You started putting together models and making little monsters out of, dough, Play-Doh and stuff like that. So it's always been this kind of thing has been a hobby for me, And from then, always wanting to get into show business, contacted Dick Smith and Rick Baker, other guys like that, and came out to Hollywood in '83 and, started working then in the industry. There's not a whole lot of schooling that you can take to be a creature effects person. I started just by getting Fangoria magazines or anything I could get a hold of, Famous Monsters magazines, and reading in between the lines of the fine print of how Rick Baker put the schlock makeup on for the John Landis picture. Little tiny things I just get snippets of, and I kind of just taught myself in the basement, doing experimenting on myself, and my brother and I would do that. Put makeup on each other until we kind of sort of got the idea of how to do it. He's a year and a half older than I am. So he would always try things, and I'd kind of watch him, and it went from getting in trouble, and I'd always say, I'm not going to tick Dad off that way, to even doing creature effects. He tried to take his head cast by himself, in the basement on our bench press. He laid down and poured plaster all over his face. He had no Vaseline, which is we use to release your face from the plaster, and he locked all his hair, his eyebrow hair and his eyelash hair, into the mold. And I had to help him, basically force this stone off of his face, and it tore everything out of all his hair out of his follicles. Anyway, Jeff went through a lot, which has made me who I am today. I'm scarred. I've got no scars because of my older brother. This is my sort of design. Well, this actually is the display room.
Since Kevin's got one of the biggest effects shops in Hollywood, we thought we'd ask him to take us on a little tour.
Inside this room, over here, we've got Nick Cage and John Travolta. These are close-up heads that we use for face-off. They're all made out of silicone, and they have this sort of flexible, very, very lifelike shine to them. And they're all painted with translucent paint so that the light can actually absorb into them and not reflect back in a bad way. Each face was put over a muscle face that was removed for the right moment in the operation. It started in horror. That's where I think back in the 80s, there were so many films being made, after Halloween and Friday the 13th. And my first feature was Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and that's where I met Robert Englund, and we got along so well that I kept coming back all the way through the fourth film. So I started in horror. I didn't want to be labeled as a horror guy because I thought I had a lot more to offer the business than just cutting people's heads off. But look at the stuff I'm doing now. It's all cutting people's heads off. Never changes. I guess I got good at that kind of stuff, making things, guts look real and all that stuff, and, doing the blood thing. At one point, Ichabod finds the Tree of the Dead, which is similar to this display here, and he notices that it's bleeding, and he breaks it open with an axe, and inside are all the victims' heads that he's been chopping off in the last month. We had set up like this, and we just covered them with blood, and they kind of undulate and move around inside of the Tree of the Dead. But horror was sort of my background. That's how I started, and then slowly I got into, went from B films to A films, and then got into, mainstream stuff. I try to keep it as versatile as possible. Recently, I've been doing a lot of dead bodies or bodies that are sleeping, like in Face Off. These are the full body Nick Cage and John Travolta figures that we did for Face Off. During the operation sequence, you see them laying head to head, and then we go in tight for close-ups on the faces you saw previous to this. I was commissioned first to put John's head onto Nick's body. So this is both Nick's body, both on Nick and on John, and I convinced them that if we're going to go ahead and do one fake body, to do two, because when you put a fake body next to a real body, you have that comparison factor, and I wanted to eliminate that. In the past, I've been labeled as, the doll guy after Child's Play. I had everybody calling me, we've got a killer doll in our film, and we want you to build it. You're only as hot as your last job, and you're only known for what you just did. Stan Winston's the dinosaur guy, because of Jurassic Park. And, I guess I don't want to label myself, but I have been doing a lot of, realistic bodies lately, so I'm the body guy now for this month.
With the kind of success that Kevin has achieved over the years, we wondered if he still finds time to get his hands dirty.
I don't know what it is, but I can't not be involved. And even when the guys that work here don't want me involved, go up to the office and do some paperwork. Call that producer back. I just love it so much. I mean, I have directed, and that's what I'd love to be doing all the time. But I think I'd still come back and sculpt a maquette. I'm always sculpting. I even, every now and then, just to make sure I haven't forgotten, I'll make a mold. I haven't run foam latex in a long time, but everything else I've done.
With such an impressive body of work on film, we wondered which projects Kevin would count amongst his favorites.
Face Off was great. It just was great working with John Woo, very professional. Had John Travolta and Nick Cage are just gentlemen, very, very nice to work with. I was able to work for 3.5 months in building these bodies, and pretty much they left me alone and came on set and got a great reaction from the crew and from the director, so it was a positive reinforcement for the work that we did. It made it to the screen, which a lot of times your stuff gets thrown away and cut out, and it actually made it to the screen, and it was a good film. So you look at the whole thing, and it was a nice experience. The Crypt Keeper, designing the Crypt Keeper was great because I could take it from pencil to on paper all the way to sculpture, molding, mechanizing, taking him to the set. And I used to write for him. Actually, the first time you ever hear the Crypt Keeper talk, it's my voice even, because we needed a line to start the whole sequence off. I was able to direct it, and it was just a blast, to be able to take a character from zero all the way through, was a great experience.
It was getting late and Kevin had to head off to a production meeting, but he did have this to say about his philosophy.
I just want to have fun. This industry can be very, very tough. I mean, just dealing with people, and it's mostly budgets, time, and stress and pressure. In the last 5 years, since my daughter was born, I don't mean to be hokey about this, but it just put things in perspective. And I'm trying to have as much fun as possible, and I want to look back on it with happy thoughts, not thinking, oh, I almost died in water pushing a body down or whatever. I want to have, joyous thoughts. So.